What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Over the weekend, we had a massive leak hit the internet. This seemingly a result of a hack for Game Freak and Nintendo, this giving us insight into all kinds of past projects with Pokemon, future projects, games, the anime series, and even mention of the Switch 2. We're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a developer direct that's coming up this week from Microsoft, and well, at this point, it's anybody's guess what could be there. Then we also have another case of the all-digital future, this one starting to show just how much you own those digital games. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members to the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Amazon Prime Gaming. If you have Amazon Prime, there's actually a selection of games that you can pick from and just claim right now. And I saw the list and I figured, you know what? I know a lot of people out there have Amazon Prime and don't realize that you can do this. So let's take a look at the list of games here for October. Wario64 did post up here over on their official account, and this just makes it easier to see everything. These are available right now, which includes games like, oh look, Tomb Raider Legend is in there, Doom Eternal, BioShock Remastered, Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. I will say this seems to be a mix of GOG, Epic Game Store, I think there's a Microsoft Store listing in there, so it is kind of all over the place. Then moving up to October 17th, we have Killing Floor 2, which is an awesome one. That's a big highlight there. Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Ghoul Patrol. October 24th, we have Pumpkin Jack, Gargoyles Remastered. October 31st, Plague Tale Innocence, Death's Door, which if you have not played Death's Door, highly recommend that. Scorn. Again, if you have Amazon Prime, you may as well take advantage of this by just clicking a button, and maybe you're getting a PC handheld for Christmas, the holidays, or you already have one. There's just more stuff for your library to use there, or of course, just on your regular gaming PC. Also, last week to close out, we talked about a potential for God of War games, the older ones, getting remastered, and wouldn't you know it, we then had the Tomb Raider collection, well, the second Tomb Raider collection that was announced from Aspyr, and we have a full trailer for it here. This is just titled Tomb Raider 4, 5, 6 Remaster, and that's on the Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, PC, so basically everything there. It's coming out February 14th, 2025 at $30, and I looked at the list and thought it was kind of funny. Okay, so we have Tomb Raider The Last Revelation, Tomb Raider Chronicles, and then Tomb Raider The Angel of Darkness. Now, I believe it was The Last Revelation. I think I played that on the Dreamcast. Basically, the first two were a mix of Dreamcast or PS1, but then Angel of Darkness is particularly interesting because that was a PS2 game. So now we see Aspyr starting to wade into the PS2 releases, and it does make me think of what other plans they have in the future, but in Angel of Darkness, it wasn't exactly viewed as a positive for the franchise. Well, that was kind of buggy. The controls weren't great. I actually played it somewhat recently, like in the last few months, on the PS2 for a video I had done on that memory card, and it wasn't great. It wasn't very intuitive with the controls. So what we've seen previously from Aspyr with the other Tomb Raider Remastered games, they did actually update the controls, be more modernized. So maybe that's something along with just the visuals being up-resed and some textures being changed out. Might be enough to make Angel of Darkness bearable. I guess we'll see next year. Oh, and shocking no one, as we're about to talk about a bunch of leaks that did shock people. Actually, Nintendo's next big release, Super Mario Party Jamboree, did show up online, and of course people are downloading it and data mining it, so I don't really know what big spoilers necessarily would be out there for Super Mario Party Jamboree, but just in case, I'm letting you know it is being passed around online and people are combing through some of the files. So if there was some big story spoiler you were trying to avoid for Mario Party Jamboree, just let you know, put the blinders on now. Fortunately, it's out in a few days, but this is just basic stuff for Nintendo. They deal with it every single release, it seems like, by now, at least a week or so before. It just shows up online, and then there's really not much Nintendo can do about it at that point. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this massive leak, I mean, disastrous leak for Game Freak and Nintendo, as it has to do with like the most valuable property right now in entertainment, and that's Pokemon. As over the weekend, we had a ton of information just start appearing online. It seemed to be stemming from a person on Discord who had somehow gained access to like hundreds of gigabytes, even terabytes of information from Game Freak. And then we started seeing images of Dev Portal from Nintendo, which is a resource for developers who are, of course, making games for Nintendo's platform. It's kind of like the backend that you sign into and you can submit patches and games and that kind of thing for certification. So when you start seeing that, you're like, oh, okay, this is getting pretty serious, especially since it appears to be a phishing or a hack that's a result of phishing. So figuring out maybe an employee's login information and then using that to gain access and then start pulling information from it. And we know this because you can actually see the employee's name and information on some of the slides. Like, it was getting to that level where that stuff was getting out there. So it is quite malicious with what has happened here. But of course, a lot of information's out there and is starting to circulate outside of a lot of the employee information that most people, I'm sure, are not sharing or really care to know about. But it's hard to turn away from a lot of the gaming stuff, especially when it comes to the history of Pokemon, which this seems to center around quite a bit. Now, we did get an official response that was released by Game Freak saying they have discovered that personal information of employees and others was leaked in connection with unauthorized access to our server by a third party in August 2024. So it is important to note that this event was a few months ago when it actually happened, and now we're starting to see some of the files just being dumped online. And this is something that is evolving as we go along, so it seems like every other hour just more stuff is being found as people are combing through this or as the person is just releasing it. Now, they do list a few things here, including the leaked personal information. The data regarding our employees, etc., was 2,606. That's quite a few people actually being involved with that. Name, company, email address, all that kind of stuff. Response to individuals whose personal information has been leaked. We are contacting the affected employees individually. For those who cannot be contacted individually due to resignation or other reasons, we will notify them through the announcement and set up a contact point to respond to inquiries regarding this matter. And then they have measures to prevent reoccurrence, just basically bolstering up their security, which they say they've already rebuilt and inspected the server, and will strive to prevent reoccurrence by further strengthening our security measures. So it is kind of to the point now where we do have a ton of info around past things for Pokemon, and that is something that is kind of interesting to see. For example, there's actually transcriptions of conversations between developers and stuff behind the scenes. Some of it is kind of weird, I will admit. Like, it's going around, it's like, whoa, what was going on within Game Freak? But some of the other stuff, though, includes like source code for some of the older Pokemon games. People are thinking about, can this now be ported to, say, PC? Keep in mind, you're then playing around with information and source code and stuff that was technically stolen and then dropped online, so there's a lot of ethical stuff involved with that. There's also a lot of like misinformation and fake leaks that were being mixed in, just for fun, I guess. Some of it was legitimately people were misinterpreting some of the stuff too, so it was kind of a mess overall. But some of the things that I think were pretty interesting, and again, a lot of people were discussing, was the fact that this seems to have information around the upcoming Gen 10 releases. Now, CentroLeaks has been following this quite a bit, very thoroughly, and I didn't really want to get into the TV and film stuff. I'm just going to stick to the games, and one of the reasons I say that is because it seems like a lot of the plot details, believe it or not, have actually leaked for like the anime, any of the movie stuff, so that is that's kind of rough, right? Especially for someone looking forward to it or following along. That's actually just spoiled, I mean, hours and hours worth of future episodes. But either way, we have 3 of the games that were covered here, which includes Pokemon Legends ZA, which, I mean, it's not shocking to think that it was originally set to release in 2024. We hear about games getting delayed internally all the time anyway. It is indeed in development for the current Switch. We have Pokemon Gaia, that is the code name for it. That's Gen 10. There are 2 versions, a K and an N. These are Japanese names. And then they also mention it is indeed in development for the Switch 2, but a version for the Switch 1 is also being tested, and it wouldn't shock me that is most likely a cross-gen game, provided they can make it work. We also got the official code name for the Switch 2, which had already been discovered previously, but there was some people going back and forth. Is this correct? Appears to be. It is named Ounce. So we had the NX for the Switch. For the Switch 2 is Ounce, O-Z. And then another little wrinkle here when it comes to the gaming side, there was a project called Pokemon Synapse that was discovered. That is the code name for it. It's a multiplayer Pokemon game, and it's a collaboration between ILCA and Game Freak. Originally, people were discovering files for it and it was being labeled MMO, which people thought, wait a minute, did we just find the massive multiplayer game that Game Freak has been working on this whole time in secret for Pokemon that people have dreamed about? Not necessarily. This seems to be described more as Splatoon-like, so I'm now thinking about, okay, it's more like an arena style competitive game, not necessarily, I guess, a shooter like Splatoon, but being broken into two teams and then competing over a common objective. In this case of Splatoon, it's kind of painting and splatting each other. So we have seen, obviously, the Pokemon Company try out all kinds of spin-offs, and we've seen them have different games for phones or the current Nintendo platform. Not shocking to think that they would try something completely out of left field to see if it worked. And it could also be something that they maybe were pushing to, say, phones, and then also on maybe the Switch 2 at this point. I mean, if you think about it, we have Pokemon ZA that's coming up, we think, first half of next year, and then maybe following that up in 2026, we would have Gen 10 coming out, although they did Arceus and Scarlet and Violet the same year, so I guess they could do that whole thing next year again, just reenact it with ZA, and then codename Gaia, Gen 10. But that's, this is a lot of stuff, as I mentioned, is getting out there. I mean, I just scratched the surface here. The fact that there are prototype builds of the older DS games, for example, there are sprites that were kind of left on the cutting room floor for different Pokemon. There are explanations as to why they went the route they did with some of the development around different games, going back to Kanto for different reasons, other things. So if you are someone who's just fascinated or just very interested in the history of Pokemon, or just Pokemon in general, there is a lot of stuff to discover here. But also keep in mind, Nintendo is, they're not happy right now. I mean, sure, I know that a lot of this is around Game Freak, but I mean, we have Nintendo who owns part of the Pokemon Company, and they heavily protect that Pokemon intellectual property. So when you see a leak like this get out there, they are certainly making the rounds online, probably in all kinds of Discord rooms, investigating, trying to figure out who actually went ahead and pulled this information and started leaking it online. So they are, they better be looking around constantly, head on a swivel, because Nintendo is, they're probably looking to make an example right now after all of this. But let me know what you guys thought about this stuff down below in the comments. No spoilers for, I guess, the anime stuff or anything there, but what about some of these games and details we're finding out around what their plans are for the next generation, as well as their development for the Switch 2, codenamed Ounce. Next up, let's talk about a gaming event that is being rumored for this week, but you may be hearing about it as soon as today, and that has to do with an Xbox Partner Direct. We can see this over on Twitter X. This is from Special Nick, saying, hearing rumblings of an Xbox Partner show later this coming week. And Nate actually went ahead and posted up over on Reset Area. He's been kind of kicking around about this here and there, that there would be some sort of Xbox news coming up. And here we are now heading into the new week with seemingly a partner showcase happening here soon. And I saw some people talking about this, thinking, oh, we're going to hear about a lot of first-party stuff. Most likely with a partner show like this. For example, last year we had one. Here was the lineup card at the end of the show, just kind of going over everything, and yeah, it's just that it's a lot of third-party games. I mean, there's like Persona's in there, Final Fantasy XIV's in there, even Roblox. But then you also have like Frostpunk, and you had Stalker, and we do have technically a Stalker game coming up. We also have things like Dragon Age, where they seem to be throwing around a ton of money for that, and I wouldn't be shocked if that was also in there. And maybe they remind people that Metaphor exists, because Microsoft did have the marketing, and that game is doing incredibly well. The game that I would obviously like to see as like the big headliner for this thing is Final Fantasy XVI. And I think at this point, Microsoft clearly is making the push with Square Enix to bring more titles over, and they've been fairly successful making that happen. I just think the remake trilogy is off the table until it's completed, and then maybe there's a certain amount of time even after that before it gets away from PlayStation as a multi-plat. In this case, though, it seems like Final Fantasy XVI is set up nicely, even for just a partner showcase to present it there. I mean, we're removed from Tokyo Game Show now, where probably would have been a great spot for it, but that's kind of the big thing I'm expecting here. Otherwise, it's a lot of third-party stuff, so it could legitimately be anything, and we may even see some fun Game Pass announcements, maybe some that just drop in immediately. So keep your eyes out for this announcement. It should give us, hopefully, an indication as to some of the things we can expect there, as they do give us typically a little write-up and preview for the event. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that all-digital future once again, as we have a bit of an update as to how some of these digital games are presented at time of checkout, which we've talked about how there was that law that was being passed in California that seemed to have platform holders remove the purchase button or buy button and kind of replace that, or at least let the customer know they are not actually buying the game technically when you hand over money for a digital copy. We can see this was posted up. This is over on Engadget, who noticed that when you open your shopping cart with items inside before going to payment, a notice at the bottom right states a purchase of a digital product grants a license for the product on Steam. This is a little red box down here that's highlighted, and it's interesting because, like I mentioned, California is passing or signed the AB 2426 into law that forces digital marketplace to make it clear to customers when they only purchase a license to access media, it will not apply to permanent offline downloads. Only digital copies of video games, music, movies, TV shows, or ebooks from an online storefront. Essentially letting you know that, hey, this is a license and it can be revoked at any time. That seems to keep surprising people, by the way. Like, it recently happened with Hotline Miami 2 in Australia, where there was some weird thing with like the classification board. It didn't pass, but for some reason, it was still available on PlayStation 5 for a year, and even a PlayStation Plus. Somehow they all of a sudden discovered that, oh, it doesn't have a rating, so we have to pull it. Took it out of people's library and gave them a refund. And that was it. Like, even if you didn't necessarily consent to it, you're like, well, no, I want to keep the game. I don't really care if it does or doesn't have a rating. Didn't matter. But if you had that technically up on your shelf as a physical copy, well, you'd still have it right now. So I don't really think this changes anything, though, because it's a little red box that people are just going to click past anyway. And that's sort of it. It's just like, hey, it's just in case you're wondering, you're still going to get to play the game right now, but it's just a license. I don't really think people care that much. I'm just more thinking about when it comes to control of the market and what platform holders have if there is no physical copy when it comes to their control around pricing, and what if there's nowhere else to buy the game other than them. How much trust do you have in the platform holders to actually play nice, we'll say, when it comes to pricing and availability or anything else you could think of that they would be able to take advantage of to just get more money? But hey, at least now there's a disclaimer when you're going to click the not purchase button. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you buy the traditional Pokemon games when they release, do you get both versions or just one? 75% just get one version and that's it. But then 13% say you get one version on release, then the other version later on. 12%, you just get both games right away. And that was actually very common. Like, people would come into the stores when we had all the different Pokemon games there. If there's a big release like Sun and Moon, for example, it's a very big release. They just come in, oh yeah, I'll take both of them. 80 bucks, here you go. Now it's 120. Eventually, maybe next generation, right, here with this Nintendo, it'll be 140 because it'll be $70 each. And that's kind of thing. It adds up very, very quickly, but for Pokemon fans, it doesn't really matter. They just want to get both so you can collect all the Pokemon in either version, trade them back and forth, evolve Pokemon, all that kind of thing. But it is, I mean, it's something that's kept up. It stood the test of time. The 2-version release, it worked back in the 90s, and it's going to work again, I'm sure, on the Switch 2 or the Ounce. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Anonymous, says 2.2 gigabytes. Maybe it is some sort of NSO for GameCube, and the way it works is that the beginning of the games saved locally, and when you play it, the next parts are being downloaded in the background or something. This is actually brought up to me a few times now, and it does kind of make sense. So you would section off 2.2 gigabytes of storage for the application so that it can indeed allow you to stream a game while it's downloading and then rebuilding and setting it up so it's local. That would actually be a very intriguing feature for Nintendo to take advantage of with something like GameCube or Wii. GameCube would make more sense. 2.2 gigabytes, a GameCube game compressed or even just kind of left uncompressed, it's like a gigabyte or so there. Like, if people go, of course, rip their disc or they go online and download them, it's right around there. So maybe you could do 2.2 gigabytes and it's like 2 games and they're just testing these 2 and that's it. And it's like, hey, go ahead and play it. And we're going to have it like stream in data and then also download it in the background and see how the handoff goes. That would actually make a lot of sense and would be a really cool feature, by the way, for next generation. As we know, Nintendo likes the idea of pick up and play. That's why the Switch OS is as fast as it is. But the idea of you don't have to wait for a download on a system for some reason with the Switch where the download speed is like the slowest I feel like I've seen in a long time, just in general for a game console. Just eliminate that completely and the game starts up. Lower quality, sure, but you can just start playing it immediately and then the handoff happens without you even realizing it. That would be a legitimate next-gen feature for Nintendo when it comes to NSO, but We should find out soon, because I feel like they're going to announce whatever it is they're doing with this this game test probably several days before it goes live. But who knows? I mean, they're also asking people not to say anything, and I'm sure the internet won't post anything about whatever it is they're playing with Nintendo's secret playtest. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last Friday's Newswave, I'll have it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see a bit of a deep dive into Alarmo and see what exactly Nintendo didn't tell you about their newest alarm clock, I'll leave that in a card right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.